So life has always been something that kind of existed aside from real science, because we really haven't anything particularly useful to say about it. In early stages, zoology was essentially a descriptive science. And we didn't really have anything useful to say about life. It just it inhabited an entirely different part of our brain. But for the first time, what is extraordinary about, I guess, what Darwin did, it was like Newton, who first divined the laws of motion from seeing the way stuff behaved at the bottom of a gravity well in a gas envelope full of friction. The laws of motion he divined, nobody had ever seen them happening. Nobody had ever seen an object remaining in a state of motion until some other force acted upon it, because everything always has other forces acting upon it. So everything we see runs down or speeds up or whatever. We never see anything just continuing in steady motion because we live in the very specific place that we do. Darwin did a similar thing because he divined the laws of evolution, again from the very, very complicated, chaotic world we find ourselves in, and because he wasn't able to look at 1 million years or 5 million years or 10 million years in a moment, we have from the tiny, tiny little snapshots we can see here and there to divine what is far from obvious, which are the laws of evolution. And it's only when we get the computer that we are finally able to see actually happening in real time the processes by which enormously simple processes gradually ramp up to produce fantastically complex results. This is the thing that Darwin had divined and predicted, and it's only in modern times with the computer that we suddenly can see it at work, and it's quite extraordinary that we now can do that. And as a result of that, what the computer has enabled us to do is have a new model. Now, one of the things I think we're probably going to hear a little bit about this evening is the nature of consciousness, the way the mind works. And there are all sorts of different views about whether the brain can be modeled as a computer, as a Turing device, or if it's something fundamentally different than that. But nevertheless, the computer, just by being here and making us familiar with it, has given us a whole new way of thinking about the way the brain works and the way that life works. Because previously, we didn't have any kind of model for how enormous simplicity gives rise to enormous complexity. But anybody who spent any amount of time with a computer or programming will know that the most complex word processing program or graphics program or model of what happens in a wind tunnel is reduced to simple instructions that will typically be add 1 to X. Tiny, 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 simple little issues. And you follow them up the ramp of complexity and you see that it is a continuous ramp. So life suddenly becomes, even though we may not understand a number of things about exactly where it came from or how it got to where it did, we can see the process by which it arrived. And so if you imagine giving a 19th century detective and a 20th century detective this particular problem about a crime that would have happened now, and say the suspect was seen one day walking down a street in London and 36 hours later was seen wandering through the desert in New Mexico. Now a 19th century detective would have no idea at all about what had happened. He would only say something very, very strange and mysterious is at work here, and I have no idea what it is. It must be something miraculous has happened. A 20th century detective would say, well, I don't necessarily know whether he flew on British Airways or American Airlines or United. I don't know whether he went to Albuquerque or changed at Denver or whatever. I don't know which car hire company he would have got his car from, and unless we can find the records from the airline or from the car hire company or from his credit card, we may never know the precise route by which he got there. But there's no essential mystery. And what the computer has done by giving us a model, just as when Harvey discovered the circulation of the blood, it only came after we had invented for ourselves pumps and complex plumbing. We suddenly understood how the heart worked. Of course, we were rather over-enthusiastic and tried to interpret the whole body as something that was essentially hydraulic. And we may be over-enthusiastically trying to interpret the whole idea of life and consciousness as being susceptible to computation, which may or may not be true, but nevertheless the existence of the model of the computer, just as the existence of the model of hydraulic plumbing, gives us something that means we now understand what is happening and there is no essential